State security services say at least 40 people are dead and over 100 injured after heavily armed gunmen burst into a packed theatre near Moscow and opened fire. Now, it happened at the Crocus Concert Hall, part of which is in flames after explosives were detonated. Steve Rosenberg, our Russia editor, has the very latest from Moscow.
Russian Security Service correspondent Alex Hogan reporting on this live from London for us. Hi, Alex. What do you know?
Hi,
what can you tell us?
Martha. We're just getting more details coming in about this, but a terrifying scene for people who were at a concert. This was a concert hall in Moscow, just in the surrounding area, when people who were watching the band Picnic suddenly heard the sound of gunfire. People started screaming, running, creating this mass exodus as people tried to escape. And as we look at sites just like this, some of these horrible scenes of mass panic, that is likely what could have caused some of the other injuries. We know as many as 100 people have been wounded after about 5 gunmen who were dressed in camouflage came in to that concert hall and started opening fire. We know as many as 70 ambulances responded to the scene as flames broke out from the building. Again, this mass panic at a time where there's still not a lot of details as to exactly who these gunmen are, but we have heard from the mayor of Moscow saying that this has been a terrible tragedy, as right now, with all of this still unfolding but 40 people have been confirmed dead, whether those were all victims who were gunshot victims or people who could have been trampled in this mass exodus. Ambulances, police on.
We continue to follow 2 breaking news stories: Princess Catherine's cancer diagnosis, and in Moscow, where Russian media is reporting dozens of people are dead and more than 100 are injured following a mass shooting and fire at a concert hall. According to Russian media, several gunmen in military fatigues burst into Crocus City Hall and began shooting at the crowd. Russian media also says the suspects threw explosives, which caused the building to catch fire. Reports say visitors are being evacuated, but some may be trapped by that fire. The incident is being called an apparent terror attack. Let's bring in Sam Vinograd. She is a CBS News contributor and a former assistant secretary for counterterrorism, threat prevention, and law enforcement policy for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Sam, thanks very much for being with us. Can you tell us about how the U.S. and Russian governments are responding to this still unfolding situation?
Certainly. I think it's important to keep in mind that just about 2 weeks ago, the U.S. government actually issued a call for American citizens in Russia to avoid large gatherings like concert halls. In my experience, having been a part of issuing these kinds of advisories in the past, that sort of notice would have been based on credible intelligence about an imminent terrorist attack. It would have been based on sources indicating planning and access to venues and weapons for an attack in Moscow. So the U.S. government was very clearly aware that something was in the works. Fast forward to today, and in the immediate aftermath of this apparent terrorist attack, it is a certainty that on the intelligence side, U.S. government officials are working to ascertain who the perpetrators were of this attack. Number 2, if there are any other attacks that may be imminent. And then on the security side and on the diplomatic side, our embassy is undoubtedly trying to ascertain whether any American citizens were present at the concert hall, and if so, if they were hurt and if they're in need of any kind of support whatsoever. So this is an intelligence exercise for the time being, as well as an immediate security one too.
And Sam, I know it's early yet, but coming on the heels of the re-election of Russian President Vladimir Putin, is timing that, you know, is difficult to ignore, but obviously it's unclear whether or not there's a relation there. But what do you make of the sense, you know, that this is, you know, sort of right on the heels of that event? There's been, as we were talking to a previous guest, some dissatisfaction with Putin, but at the same time, the president won his re-election by overwhelming numbers in an election that outside observers, including the United States, obviously question the integrity of. What should we make of when this attack is taking place?
Well, again, the U.S. government, I believe the Canadians as well, actually warned that an attack was imminent 2 weeks ago. So while the timing does come after the sham election that Putin claims to have won, the planning for an attack was understandably underway for several weeks at least, based upon the U.S. government's warning. I do think it's a little dangerous to start speculating on whether this was or wasn't linked to Putin's sham election at this time. Moscow and Russia are not strangers to terrorist attacks. We've seen ISIS-linked entities engage in attacks in the past, separatists and others. So at this point, again, while the immediate focus is ensuring that there's no additional loss of life, the actual perpetrators of this attack could be any number of entities, whether it's individuals upset about the sham election results, whether it's separatists from Chechnya or other separatist regions, whether it's ISIS-linked entities. There's a long list of potential perpetrators, and I am sure that the FSB, Russia's intelligence services, the CIA, and intelligence partners globally are working to ascertain who the perpetrators are, not only because of this attack, but because if this was a global terrorist organization and not one that is just focused on Russia, folks are going to want to rule out the possibility that there may be other attacks, whether in Russia itself or more broadly across the globe.
And as we continue to monitor these images, information that was gathered, you said, about this potentially being in the works, that kind of information, Sam, that's not information that would have been shared with the Russians, would it? I mean, that is something that would have gone out.
I actually think it would, about a potential imminent terrorist attack and terrorism-related plotting, while simultaneously warning the public to avoid certain venues to avoid a civilian loss of life. So despite the incredibly tense and acrimonious relationship between the United States and Russia at this time, I do believe that there was intelligence sharing related to the advisory that the U.S. government put out 2 weeks ago about an imminent terrorist attack. And I would also assume, Elaine, that in the aftermath of this attack, as the U.S. government gathers intelligence on the perpetrators and any other plots related to this one, it would share that with the Russians as well as with partners. We may also see the U.S. government offer recovery-related support, disaster-related support in the aftermath of this terrorist attack.
For an escalation of the war with Ukraine through this concert attack? I mean, is that what is being implied here by what you're hearing from Moscow?
Well, this is what's being implied by the independent Russian media. And all these 2 or 3 hours I'm monitoring the Russian media. Yes, there are 3 coincidences which colleagues from independent Russian media are pointing to. A, the fact that for the first time, Dmitry Peskov, Putin's press secretary, called what's going on in Ukraine a war and not a special military operation. That's number one. Number two, a coincidence is that there are reports already of people getting color papers to be mobilized into the army en masse. And this is a second coincidence. And number 3 coincidence is the fact that Russia has been very actively trying to basically strike Ukrainian energy infrastructure in a very, very significant flare-up of shelling of Ukraine recently, which may point to preparations of something bigger. So this is just suppositions. But these are suppositions that, because of the course of war of Russian aggression against Ukraine, many people find pretty serious and credible.
Konstantin Eggert with the latest excellent analysis on a developing story coming out of Russia tonight, that shooting at a concert hall outside of Moscow. Konstantin, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to cross over now to DW Russia desk correspondent Vladimir Esipov. Vladimir, what more do we know about this attack? I know more details have been coming in.
What we know for sure, it's the bloodiest and most serious terrorist attack on Moscow soil since more than 20 years, since the hostage taken in the Moscow musical theater Nordost in the autumn 2002. You mentioned already at least 40 dead and 100 injured, but it's far from over because the building is still on fire. In the special forces of Russian police trying to catch the terrorists inside, there's at least 3 groups of special forces entered the building. and the firemen trying to fight the fire. So it's too early to say how many people will be dead and how many injured all across Russia. In big cities, in Moscow and St. Petersburg, there are security measures on the rise. The concert and all other events are being cancelled, and the school lessons are being cancelled as well.
The U.S. Embassy in Moscow just 2 weeks ago published a warning about an imminent terror attack in Moscow. What do you know about that, and how was it received by the Kremlin? Do we know?
We know there's a lot of speculations going on in the Russian sector of internet about what exactly American secure special services knew a couple of weeks ago about possible attack on the Russian capital and behind this. And it's a lot of speculations going on right now, but there's no precise information for the time being who exactly could be behind this.
Ukrainian authorities have said that Ukraine had nothing to do with this attack. The spokesperson of the U.S. National Security Council has also commented. I want you to take a listen to what was said.
Sorry?
Let's take a listen to this soundbite.
There is no indication at this time. There is no indication at this